Now that you've completed your bell ringer, number 1, we're going to move on to number 2. This is the lecture and informational slides. This is going to be in view only. I'm going to put it in the present mode so that you can go along with me and see it easier. So the work session begins by you're going to watch the teacher video on the principles of design slides that follow in order to identify the following principles in interior design: harmony and unity, balance, proportion and scale, contrast, emphasis and dominance, and rhythm. Those are the principles of design. All right, number 1, harmony and unity is when all of the parts of the visual image relate to and complement each other. This pulls the pieces of a visual image together. It can be achieved through things called repetition and rhythm. Patterns and shapes can help achieve harmony. If you look at this picture down here, you can see that we have some patterns in the feathers and some colors, patterns here that repeat. And that gives harmony of the whole picture. By repeating these patterns in an interesting arrangement, the overall visual image helps it come together. Balance is the next principle of design. Visual stability is achieved by placing equal visual or actual weight on opposite sides of an imaginary central axis. There are 3 types of balance: symmetrical, asymmetrical, and radial. We're going to look at those in the next slides. This example picture is that of a very balanced room. Now, in symmetrical balance, this is where traditional or formal spaces call for symmetrical balance, where the space is evenly split into 2 sides that mirror each other. For example, look at this picture. Draw an imaginary line straight down the middle, and you have exactly the same on this side as on this side. Both penguins are facing each other. Both black faces are curved outward, as if it was a mirror image. Your chairs are on this side, your chairs are on this side. This is a symmetrical balance in the design. This balance is easy to achieve as they're repeated on one side and the other. However, if you are not careful, this kind of balance can become monotonous and boring. Asymmetrical balance is the opposite of a mirror image. If you draw a line straight down the middle, you do not have exactly the same stuff on this side as you do on this side. Notice you have a lamp. No lamp over here. Notice you have purple flowers in a vase. But over here, there's a candle. This is sitting on a book. This is sitting on a tray. The picture frames on this side are different than the picture frames on this side. The visual weights of the lines, colors, forms, textures are balanced without being exact same on one side as the other. It is not an ordered as symmetrical balance, and it can be more complex and more interesting. Looking at this picture, you should see a radial balance. Radial balance happens when there is a center focal point and other elements are radiating around out from it. So, for example, you have this circular table and the chairs radiate out from around it as if it were like the sun radiating its rays outward. Another example would be a dining table, a round dining table with chairs arranged around it. There is a lot of repetition, form, texture, and color in this picture. Proportion is the ratio between the size of one part to another. Proportion is truly relative and requires the interior designer to understand the interactions between the objects within a 3D scene. So here you see a TV and a clock, and you have the shelves out here and a fireplace down here. So everything in here should balance out where it doesn't look too weird. and have one thing way bigger than it should be compared to everything else, or one thing way smaller than it should be compared to everything else. Here's another example. Scale is very similar to proportion. Scale is talking about the relationship between two or more objects, one that has a common size, such as a chair. We pretty much know what size chairs are, no matter what chair they are. Scale implies comparing the objects of this one known size, such as the chair, compared to the lamp and the mirror and the desk and the bench. Does it go together? If so, it's got good proportion and good scale. Here's another example. Everything looks like it goes together in this room. Contrast. Contrast is a lot of fun. Contrast is using the opposite or unlike elements to emphasize differences and add interest. Contrast can define your focal point. The focal point is the thing that you see when you first walk into a room, and it prevents your interior from looking too uniform and boring. The challenge is to balance the contrast so that you have a sense of overall unity and harmony, where everything goes together and works together. If you add contrast in small doses, be careful not to overdo it. Otherwise, you'll upset your sense of harmony. We have different kinds of contrast. Light and dark contrast. We see this a lot in black and white designs. The black stands out very much against the white. It is based on the use of brightness and tone values of the colors. All colors can be lightened with white and darkened with black. For example, red, black and white, or red and white. Warm colors make large rooms cozier. Cool colors can help make a small room seem larger. Using the cold and warm contrast brings balance to a room. The warm colors are colors like what you see in the sun, orange, red, and yellow. Cool colors are things you see like water, like blue, green, purple. We also see contrast in saturation. This is a contrast between luminous and dull colors. Colors can be subdued by adding black, white, gray, or complementary colors. So here we see a saturation. You may have done saturation when you play with your phones, your apps. You can remove saturation from your photos, or you can add it. You can also add contrast or take contrast out on your photo apps. Number 5, principle of design is dominance or emphasis. They're both the same meaning, just a different word to describe what we're talking about. Basically, when you walk into a room, the designer has placed something in that room to get your attention, to make you focus on. We also call it a focal point. What is the first thing you notice when you look at this room? I noticed the great big green leafy thing on that back wall. The dominant part of the composition is the one that stands out and appears the closest to you. Here's an example. What is the first thing that stands out to you in this room? The one that seems the closest. To me, it's this great, big, colorful picture. The red couches and chairs definitely stand out because they're bright, but the colorful picture, being as large as it is, jumps out more than the couches. Number 6 is rhythm. Rhythm is defined as a continuous, recurrent, and organized movement. You've probably heard of rhythm in band or music class, where people will clap a pattern. Or The organized movement of recurring or developing patterns into a connected whole is what we're referring to in rhythm, whether in music or in interior design and art. So here in this picture, you see patterns. You see patterns of the wheat. You see patterns of the birds. You see patterns in the sky. It's repeating the same colors over and over in this picture. In interior design, rhythm can be by repetition with repeated shapes, colors, textures, or patterns. Alternating shapes, colors, textures, or patterns. Continuous related movement. So we see that in things like these flowers. Here's a flower, 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 and it's moving our eye. Again, we see it in the leaves. Here is repetition. It's moving, moving, it keeps going and going. And so we see a movement based on repeating the same thing, leaf after leaf after leaf after leaf. Over here on this picture, what do you see repeating? Creating a rhythm of movement, moving our eye across the page, across the picture. That's right, the waves of sand. We also see rhythm in what we call gradation. Gradation is when things get smaller or larger. So here we have canisters, large, medium, small. Here we have a set of nesting tables, large, medium, small. Here we have candle holders, tall, medium, short. So you see rhythm moving our eye, moving our eye, and moving our eye. We also see rhythm in transition. This is more subtle. It leads the eye in a very gentle, continuous, and uninterrupted visual flow from one area to another, or from one object to another. Curved lines are a sign of transition. So if you're looking at the sofa, we see the curved lines here, the curves here, the curves here. We see curves in here. We even see some curvy lines back here. These draw our eye to the side. How do you see transition in this picture? I see the curved lines moving my eye this way, from the outside straight on into the middle. How about on the last picture? Where do you see the movement here? I see this taking us here. I also see it pulling us into here because of the darkness of the color right in here. So it kind of moves my eye into where am I going to go when I go through that door. Then we have rhythm by radiation. This is where you have all parts of your composition balanced and repeated around a center. So here you have all of these daisy petals coming out from the center. You have the sunflower petals coming out from the center. How do you see radiation in this picture? Well, you should see the center table circle with the chairs radiating out from it. How do you see radiation in this chandelier? Well, you should see a center piece and all of these little light pieces coming out from the middle to the outside. So they radiate outward. When you look at art, you see rhythm. When you look at interior design, you see rhythm. Where do you see rhythm here? Do you see the transition in the curvy lines? Do you see the patterns, repeating patterns in the colors and in the lines? That is it for this slide. You have nothing to do and turn in.